No one could handle the billionaire's daughter. Until a single dad janitor did the impossible. The morning sunlight poured through the tall glass windows of the Rosemont International Academy. A school known not just for its elite education, but for its billionaire students who walked the halls like royalty. Among them was her, the daughter of the wealthiest man in the city. Everyone knew her name, but no one dared say it too loud. Teachers feared her temper, students avoided her glare, and even the principal pretended to smile when she was near. Rumor had it that 10 teachers had already quit because of her attitude. The staff whispered about how cold she was, how she never smiled, and how every attempt to reach her ended in failure. Until one Monday morning when a new janitor walked through those same glass doors. He was a quiet man, probably in his late 30s. His hands looked rough, his uniform faded, and his eyes, though tired, had a strange gentleness in them. People didn't pay much attention to him. He was just there to clean floors. But what no one knew was that he wasn't just a janitor. He was a single dad. He had a little girl, about 8 years old, who waited for him every evening at a small apartment downtown. Her drawings covered the fridge, and every night before bed, she'd ask, "Did you smile today, Dad?" And every night, he'd reply, "I tried my best." The first time the janitor crossed paths with the billionaire's daughter was in the hallway outside the art studio. She was yelling at a staff member. Something about a painting not being good enough. When she saw him sweeping nearby, she snapped, "What are you looking at?" He didn't respond, just smiled politely and continued sweeping. No one ever smiled at her without fear. It made her freeze for a second. Then, angrily, she turned away. The next morning, he was cleaning the same hallway again. This time, she dropped her coffee cup. Without a word, he bent down, cleaned up the mess, and said softly, "It's okay. Accidents happen." She stared at him, confused. Most people avoided eye contact. He spoke to her like she was human. Not powerful, not intimidating, just human. She walked away, saying nothing. But that night, for the first time in months, she couldn't sleep. Those words, "It's okay. Accidents happen," echoed in her head. Days passed. She started noticing him, how he always greeted everyone, even when no one replied. How he repaired broken lockers when students didn't care. How he carried heavy boxes for teachers who never thanked him. And one afternoon, she saw something that changed everything. He was sitting on a bench behind the school, holding a small lunchbox. Inside were 2 sandwiches. Next to him sat a little girl with messy hair and the brightest smile. His daughter. They were laughing. Laughing so freely that it didn't fit the cold world she lived in. From a distance, the billionaire's daughter watched them. That laughter. That warmth. It felt like something she'd lost a long time ago. A few weeks later, during an art event at the academy, she was presenting her painting. A dark, abstract piece filled with chaos and loneliness. The audience clapped politely, but she looked restless. Then, out of nowhere, the janitor's daughter ran up to her. She couldn't have been more than 8. Holding a crumpled paper in her tiny hands, she said, "Your painting is sad. You should add yellow. Yellow makes everything happy." The room went silent. Everyone expected the billionaire's daughter to yell, to scold the child for interrupting. But she didn't. She just stared at that little girl. And for the first time, someone saw tears in her eyes. That night she repainted everything. She added yellow. From that day on, things began to change. The girl who once yelled now volunteered at school events. The one who avoided people started helping other students. Teachers whispered again. But this time, in disbelief. And sometimes, when no one was looking, she would sneak out behind the school, sit beside that same bench, and share her lunch with a janitor and his daughter. No one could explain it. No one knew what he said or did to her. But everyone noticed one thing. The billionaire's daughter had finally learned how to smile again. And it all started with the kindness of a man who swept floors, but understood hearts better than anyone else ever could. Sure, here's the continuation with a kindness, inspiring and motivational ending that fits naturally with your previous story tone and pacing. Emotional, cinematic, and globally relatable. Months passed, and the changes in her were impossible to ignore. She started coming to school early, sometimes even helping the janitor before classes began. She'd help him arrange chairs, wipe the blackboards, and once even painted a wall that had been dull and cracked for years. The students were stunned. The teachers whispered, "The billionaire's daughter," the same girl who once shouted at everyone, was now quietly doing things no one expected from her. When someone asked her why, she simply said, "Because kindness feels better than control." But the real turning point came one winter morning. The janitor didn't show up for work. For the first time, the halls felt empty, not because of the noise, but because of his absence. His laughter, his gentle greetings, his calm presence. It was all missing. By noon, word spread that he had fallen sick. He was hospitalized, struggling to afford his treatment. The billionaire's daughter didn't hesitate. She went straight to her father's office, a place she used to avoid. For the first time in her life, she didn't ask him for a car, a trip, or money for herself. She asked for help for someone else. Her father was stunned, but he saw something in her eyes. Compassion. The kind he hadn't seen since her mother passed away years ago. That evening, a private ambulance arrived at the small hospital. The janitor's treatment was fully covered, anonymously. But he knew, he didn't need to ask. Weeks later, he returned to work. Weaker but smiling, and when he did, he found a surprise waiting for him. The hallway he always cleaned had been freshly painted. Bright yellow. With a sign on the wall that read, "Sometimes, the smallest hearts hold the greatest strength." It was her idea. Her way of saying thank you, not with words, but with meaning. From that day forward, she volunteered at shelters, sponsored school lunches, and quietly helped students who couldn't afford books. Her father watched from a distance, realizing something he'd forgotten long ago: money can buy luxury, but kindness builds legacy. One afternoon, as the janitor packed up to leave, his little daughter ran ahead to say goodbye. The billionaire's daughter knelt beside her and smiled. "Your dad changed my life," she said softly. The little girl giggled. "He says kindness is like sunlight. You can't see it, but you can feel it." The billionaire's daughter smiled through her tears and whispered, "Then I hope I can be someone's sunlight too." That day, as the sun dipped behind the academy's glass walls, two worlds, one rich, one humble, stood side by side. And in that golden light, it was clear it wasn't wealth, power, or status that changed hearts. It was simple, human kindness. The kind that costs nothing, but means everything.